Okay, well, people are still slowly joining in and popping in like always. I'll kick it off slowly. So from my side, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depends on from where you are joining. Usually we have people from all over the world. So today, again, with us last Wednesday in January, so closing the January today with Rui. And if you missed anything in the last few weeks or throughout the last year, you can always follow us on YouTube, check it on Meetup or on LinkedIn. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will get notified of every new recording from a session that is coming in. Hosts, as always, myself and Christian, preparing for you all these sessions coming to Stuttgart user group. And just one announcement before we start. So starting a new, slightly different format from February. So from February 15th, myself and Nikola Ilic are starting Tuesday sessions, which will go every second Tuesday of a month. So Data Jazz on Tuesdays, and in a first episode, so Chris Webb will join us. So you will stay tuned with us on LinkedIn or on Twitter. It will be a slightly different format, more oriented to chit chat more than a sessions. So stay tuned here. Also, February is coming. We have a full house for February. So 2nd of February, Pascal Kiefer and Florian Klein will be talking about adding a commenting Power App to Power BI. Then Scott Sewell on 9th of February about Dataverse and Dynamics 365 with Power BI. Then, as I announced, Data Jazz on Tuesdays on 15th. 16th of February, Alexander Arvidsson, and 23rd, closing the February with Reed Heavens. So it will be a fully packed month. Join and see what we have prepared for you. And today, as you know, as you joined, and still joining, we have Rui Romano with us. So Rui, welcome. Good evening. I know you had a long day behind you, but people are eagerly awaiting also to hear something about API. So welcome, and stage is yours.
Great. I love talking about APIs. Okay, let me just share my screen. Let me know if
it's visible.
It's visible. Okay, very well. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Romano. I'm from Portugal. I live in Porto. I'm very passionate about data. More or less 15 years working always with the Microsoft BI stack, and the last years always in the Power BI platform. I joined Microsoft last year in the Power BI CAD team. For those of you who don't know what we do, so we usually sit in the middle of the largest customers and the biggest implementations of Power BI all over the world. We help them, we learn from them, we learn especially from their problems, and we curate those problems and take that feedback to the product group, and then we try to solve their problems with the help of the product group, of course. And ultimately, and that's why you see a lot of CAT members in user groups and blogs, we try to scale those solutions, and we try to provide a solution not only to these customers, but to the entire community and all the users that use Power BI. And it's an amazing job. So I'm really happy of working in this team with an amazing team behind it. You can follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I also have a blog. One of my 22 goals is to feed up that blog a little bit more. And this is it. So there is nothing just if you have any question, just follow me on one of these channels and ask, and I'll do my best to help you. Session today is called Power BI API Extravaganza. So it's not a Power BI introduction. So if you are new to Power BI, you might get a little bit confused. So it's 100% focused on APIs. Everything, literally everything that I'm about to show you, it's already on my GitHub, including the slides. So if you go to this link on GitHub, you search for my name, you have a repo there, the slides are there. There are some recordings of this session that I made on other user groups, although I always post the same session, but I always put new demos. So you might, even today, you will see some new stuff that I didn't demo before. It's a little bit difficult for me sometimes to get up the timings because I'm always adding and removing stuff, but I always try to put on the first demos, the on priority, the ones that I think is more important. So please, Augustine, if I'm getting out of time, let me know, and I will move forward a little bit faster, or there will be some demos that will be that I won't be able to show. But not only the slides are on GitHub, but on the slides, every time I talk about something, there are links to scripts and to samples of that you can explore on your own. And this is my style of doing the session. So I don't focus a lot on the details. I'm not going to do debugging line by line. I want you the main goal is for you to understand what is possible to do. And if this is useful for you, of course, you can download the code, you can try it on your own, or you can, even if you don't know how to script and how to code, you can ask for some help. But the real thing is knowing that it's possible to do. It's knowing that, okay, maybe that is something that you are spending a lot of time doing manually, that there is an API that can help you solve it, and solve it in seconds, instead of spending a day doing a manual task. So let's start. What are the Power BI REST APIs? So Power BI REST APIs exist since day one of Power BI. There are a collection of APIs available for you. They go from content management in Power BI, like downloading content, uploading content, creating workspaces, creating datasets, and also admin operations, things like getting the entire activity of your tenant. As an admin, assign permissions to a workspace without assigning yourself. And this is important because you, as a Power BI admin, you get access to every workspace, but to get access, you need to assign yourself into it, and that operation will be audited. Okay, so you cannot just assign yourself to a workspace and erase that track. And that's a very useful admin operation. Having, for example, and I helped the customer the other day with exactly this. So every time they have a large tenant, like 20K workspaces, and every time someone asks for access to give access to a workspace, he went to the admin portal, the workspace list. He spent like a minute or so searching for the workspace, and then assign the user to that workspace. And I built them a script that it just provides the UPN of the username of this or the security group, run the script, and it's done. So a couple of minutes operation that he usually does like every day went from minutes to seconds. Okay, so you can execute operations as an admin. Another thing that you can also do is automation. So you can, for example, if you have a task like deploying PBIX and deploying reports that is repetitive, it's error prone, you can automate that. So the REST APIs is mostly for operation purposes. You can also do real time. that are the push datasets, the streaming datasets. You can create them on the fly. You can push data. You can have dashboards and showing data in real time. Although today, for real-time purposes, the investments is going much more in things like streaming data flows. And you can also do embedding. Although embedding, it will be out of the scope. I won't talk about embedding at all. So the link on the slide, it will take you to the most important web page about the REST API. So this is the place that if you want to know what exists in terms of APIs, this is the web page you need to bookmark. It's constantly being updated. Every time there is a new API, the new API will show up in here. Let's start with a very typical one. So the get groups. So for example, groups is the same thing as workspace. Groups was the previous name before the workspace. There is an API called get groups. And when you click on an API, you will see the description of the API. You will see the request that you need to make to call this API. If it has parameters, what are the parameters, the documentation about those parameters. And you can also see a sample of the request and a sample of the response. So if you need to, let's say if you're working with a logic app and you need to use the payload to have the schema, you can take this sample even without executing the API. And what another thing that is very cool about this API, about this page, is you can play with the API with your data, with your tenant, and for that we have this button. It's the try it button that you can click, and this will ask for your authentication. In my case, it didn't ask because I'm already authenticated into Power BI, and then this will pre-populate the URL. If you need to provide parameters, you can put it over here. Let's keep it simple. Just hit run, and this is connecting to my tenant. So my Power BI tenant. Let me show you, and it's getting me the results I would get from my tenant. If I call this API from a script, from PowerShell, Python, whatever, .NET. And you can see, for example, okay, I have the test workspace. I should have in my Power BI tenant, I should have a test workspace. Here it is. And the ID should be the same, 6646, 6646. So this allows you to try any of the APIs, providing the proper parameters, and see the results. So you don't need to write any code to better understand what the API will return. Okay. Now, let's go back to the slide. So how can you play with the API? So just go to the docs, try it, and see what it returns, and see if the API, for example, this is really useful just to understand if the API will give you the data that you need, or it will do what you need before writing any script. So even myself, I use this all the time. Now, of course, this is not for work. This is more for play or to understand or to research about the APIs. If you want to do proper work with the API, yes, you need to be comfortable and you need to be okay into code, scripting, or automation, low-code tools. But any language, anything that can make an HTTP request, it will be compatible with the REST API. And there are multiple libraries out of the box that you can use. For example, on PowerShell, the entire session I will show a lot of PowerShell because that's the language I'm more comfortable at. That is a Microsoft PowerShell module that you can use. There is another PowerShell module called Power BI PS that is close to my heart because I was the one who created it. But I'm no longer investing in this module, so I would recommend to shift to use the Microsoft Power BI management model. That is also a Python Power BI package. There is a .NET NuGet that you can use. Basically, what these modules and libraries do is, I don't know, maybe someone, I guess I don't know if you can unmute. Okay. What these libraries do or modules is basically give you wrapper to the API. Sometimes you can they will give you a standard method or commandlet that you can call. For example, you don't need to worry about what are the URL that you need to call, but all of them, they also give you a method that you can call, and you can provide the URL of the API that you want to call, and you don't need to worry about, at least, of things about like authentication. Because to be honest, the authentication is normally the most complicated part to get started with the APIs, because you need to, so it's OAuth 2.0, you need to get a token. So in the end, the authentication part is you need to call the authentication provider. I will show you an example of this. You call the authentication provider, you do the authentication. If you want a prompt for the authentication, it will be called, the authentication flow is called the authorization code. So there will be a pop-up, you put your credentials, and then in the end, you get an authorization an access token. And with that access token, you can call the API. But of course, if you want to run this on a script, there won't be anyone going there and put to the credentials. So you need to use another authentication flow. It's called the client credentials. And in this, you will use an Azure Active Directory Service Principal. And I will show you how to create a service principal, because I see this in a lot of customers, that there are some myths around the service principal. People go crazy and give all sorts of permissions, and it's not that complicated. But let's start. Let me show you an example of one of the modules, so the PowerShell module, and how you can use it. So I have a PowerShell script over here. So I'm using Visual Studio Code. You could use any other PowerShell editor. Could use one that is embedded on every Windows machine. Is this Windows PowerShell IZE? I would recommend to use Visual Studio Code though. But I have a script right here, and I'm using the Microsoft PowerShell library. So this module, if you search it, let me think over here. So this is a PowerShell module that is published on the PowerShell gallery. And to install this, so you only need to run this once on your computer or laptop or server. So you just need to open a PowerShell prompt and run this command: install module Microsoft Power BI Management. If you want to provide the version, you can do it. Otherwise, it will install the latest version. And when you install the module, basically, the next time you run, you need to run a script that uses this module. It will be there. That's why you see, and one more time, all these scripts are on my GitHub. That's why you see in all my scripts this first line. Basically, I'm making sure that the module exists, because if you run it and the module is not installed, this will give you an error. And the first thing that you need to do when you want to use the API, in this case using PowerShell, is you need to call this command. It's called connect Power BI service account. Let's call it, because I want you to see something. So the first thing it does, it will show you a prompt, authentication prompt. You put your credentials, and it will say, "Okay, I'm authenticated with my account." And after that, you can just call, and the most used method, for me, the most useful method on this module is this invoke Power BI REST method. So, and what you need to provide in here, so this is the command, and you just need to provide the URL. You need to provide the method, and this will call the API for you. So, and where do you get this? Simple. So you go to that page, the documentation, and in here, the URL. So this is the API. This is always the same. You don't need to put it. So this is the part you need to put on the URL. So after this, that's if I want to just get the groups or the workspaces, I just put on the URL the groups, and the method is this first part over here. It's a get. So I'm not changing anything. I'm just getting information. So if I call this over here, invoke REST method, this will return all the workspaces that I have access. It will return as a JSON object that, of course, in PowerShell, maybe in Python it will be different, but in PowerShell, I can call convert JSON and I can get, I want to get the value property. So if I want to get this in a formatted table, I can do it like this. So and now I have all my workspaces and I can store this data, or I can, for example, get the workspaces and do a for each loop to get the data sets of each workspace if I want. Then there are other a little bit more complex APIs. For example, I want to get the data sets from a workspace. And one more time, how do you learn more? How do you learn about this API? So if I want to get data sets, so that it will be on the datasets group over here. I expand the datasets group, then there will be, and there should be, a get datasets in group. And the get datasets in group, it's a little bit different from the other. The URL is groups / the group ID / datasets, but it's still a get. So if I want to get all the datasets from a workspace, this is the URL groups, the workspace ID that I get from the previous call to groups, or even simpler, I can just open a workspace and the workspace ID is in here. It's in the URL of Power BI. So if I want to get the data sets, what I need to do is call group datasets get, and the same thing. This will return. By the way, I'm running only this part of the script. So in PowerShell, you can run the entire script, or you can run only the selection. And you can see that now I get all the information about my datasets: the ID, the name, the web URL, if the API, if it's API enabled to add rows or not, who configured the dataset, and I even get more properties, but it's not showing because of real estate. But I get even more properties. There is the created date, the modified date, the target storage mode. So you get all these properties in JSON. So but the commandlet. So this is the typical way I use the API. So I just provide the URL, but there are some commandlets that can be useful. For example, for the to get to workspaces, you don't need to call the URL with groups. There is a commandlet, a direct commandlet that you can just call get Power BI workspace, and this will return all the workspaces that you have access to. So it's a little bit more simplistic, but my recommendation is get used to use this one, because this one you won't ever be limited. If there is a new API, you are already used to use this generic commandlet. And you can also call operations as an admin, okay? And this is really important. So the admin operations, they will be listed in here. So all the operations that you need to be an admin to call, otherwise you'll get an error, are in here. And there is some very useful APIs. For example, I want to get all the applications that exist, the Power BI apps that exist in my tenant. And for that, you need to call, and this is the same for every API. So every admin API, it will have the prefix as an admin. So admin apps, and the top number of apps that you want to return will get you all the apps that exist in the tenant. With the app ID, the name, the last update, the description. Okay. If you want to have like a catalog of all the apps that exist in your tenant, this is the way to go, and you need to execute it as an admin. Okay, and this is just an introduction how to use the API using PowerShell. One more time, PowerShell and not Python, just because I'm more comfortable with PowerShell and it's easier for me to demo. Now, getting back to the authentication, and it's important for you to understand this. So what we just did when that prompt showed up was an authorization code flow, because what basically happens is the application redirects you to the authentication provider. In this case, is Azure Active Directory. You do the authentication, you get the authorization code, you get the token. And then with that token, the script is just using the token to call the API. It no longer goes to the authorization provider. Although this token has an expiration date. So after a while, you need to refresh this token. But this is taken care for you automatically if you use, for example, PowerShell commands. So you don't need to worry about this because it will use something called a refresh token to refresh the token another time. But what we are going to, I want to show you, and this is important because if you want to build any kind of script that can run on its own, you need to use another kind of authentication flow called the client credentials. And the client credentials, you need to create a service principal. And this is where sometimes things start to get messy because you are a Power BI admin, or you even have the rights in Power BI, but you are not an Azure admin. You don't have a permission to create a service principal. So you need to find someone who can create that service principal for you. And they create the service principal, and then it doesn't work because you need to give permissions in Power BI. You need to authorize the service principal to call the APIs, and then you figure out that you also need a group. So I will show you, like in 5 minutes, how you get this working from scratch. And you will see that it is 5 minutes. The only requirements is you need to bring in a room or in a meeting someone that can create a service principal or can create objects in Azure Active Directory, and someone that is a Power BI admin that can authorize that service principal. If you have those two persons in the same room, it's 5 minutes. And let me show you. I have the manual, the step-by-step process in here, but I will show you that this is in fact simple. And I want to talk about something that I see all the time, people getting crazy on assigning permissions to that service principal, and that can also get insecure, and you don't need to do that. So to create a service principal, this is what you need to do. You need to go to your Azure portal. You click on Azure Active Directory, and you go here to a menu called App Registrations. You click on App Registrations, you click on New Registration, and let's create a security group. You need to give it a name, so Service Principal, user group, so whatever. Let's copy. I don't want to lose this. So you give it a name, or just for me, don't forget to delete in the end. Temp service principal. So you give it a name. You click on register. All default, so you don't need to change anything. And now you need to save 3 things. You need to save this application ID. So let's create a notepad for that. So save the application ID. You also need to save the tenant ID. We'll need that later. And you need to go to this certificates and secrets menu. Click here. New client secret. You can give a name. A service principal can have multiple client secrets. So the client secret is like a password. It can expire. So if this is something that is just for a test, you should assign a short expiration. That way you don't need to worry about invalidating the client secret. Or you can also give this like an infinite time if you want. So create a service principal, so you can have multiple. And if something gets compromised, and this is why service principals are also more secure than using your own account on scripts. It's because first, as an admin or the creator of the service principal, you can invalidate the secret. You don't need to invalidate the password of the user. And also, no one can log into Power BI with the service principal. They can use APIs. It's for unintended operations. So when you create a service principal, it's really important. You need to copy this to the clipboard, because otherwise, if you refresh it, this will never come up again. So saving the service, the secret over here. And you don't need to do anything else on the service principal. So, and the thing that I want to call out that people sometimes go crazy is they go to this API permissions, they found out that Power BI is in here, and they go here because things don't work, they get an unauthorized, and I will tell you why they get an unauthorized. They go here, application permissions, they authorize everything. You don't need to do any of this, okay? Nothing of this. The service principal, it's done, it's ready, you can use it. And just to make my point, let's try to use it on the script. I'll go to the script, and now I'll put the application ID here, the tenant ID, and the app secret in 3 variables. And instead of calling the Connect Power BI service account with no parameters, I'm going to call the Connect Power BI service account with an option of service principal, and I will pass as the tenant ID and the credential of the service principal. Let's call it. This will work. Okay, it's authenticated with my service principal. And everything seems to be working. And now I will try to call the API. And I will get an error. And I will get an error of unauthorized. And people see this, hey, it's because of that API permissions. They go there and give all the permissions and nothing works. And the reason why this isn't working is because that's why you also need the Power BI admin. Because you created the service principal, but you didn't authorize the service principal to call the Power BI APIs. So you need to go as a Power BI admin, go to settings, admin portal, tenant settings. You search here for there is a tenant setting called allow service principals to use Power BI APIs, and in here you need to authorize not the service principal. It's not supported to put directly here the service principal, but the security group with the service principal in it. And by the way, this is a best practice. And sometimes I see people using the same security group for everything. Don't do that. Every time you change a tenant setting, create a service principal with the proper naming. But for example, you can use something like this, PBI settings hyphen service principals, or PBI settings query service principals. For example, if I want to use the create a workspace the tenant setting, I have a PBI settings workspace creators. That way, I can have a good management of who gets access to what, and I don't get into a situation of reusing the same security group with all the service principals in it. So I have PBI settings service principals. So if I go, I have 2 options. I can, of course, take the create a new security group. Maybe that's what I should do, but just to keep it simple, I will reuse that one that I already have. So I have a security group called PBI settings service principals, where I have all the service principals that are authorized called the API, and I will add the service principal in here. And after I do this, now because the service principal is authorized to call the API, now this method should be okay. It's still not, but sometimes this takes a while to synchronize. So don't get crazy. Maybe you need to wait a couple of minutes for this to work, and it's working. Okay, but it doesn't return anything. Why? Because the service principal, yes, it can call the API, but no, it doesn't have access to any workspace. Now, if I go to a workspace, let's say, for example, this workspace over here, and I give access to the service, to that security group, or directly to the temp service principal. Now, if I call again the groups API, this will return. Actually, this was still syncing, so I have access to 3 workspaces with that service principal. So, and this is it. So service principals, as you can see, is not that monster. It's very simple. But yes, you need to find someone that has the rights on Azure Active Directory, and you need to find someone that has the rights to authorize the service principal to call the APIs. After that, you are good to go. Okay, and you will then if you own the service principal, you have the secret. And if you own the workspaces that you need to give access to the service principal, for example, to refresh a data set, then you have the complete authority. You don't need more the IT admin or the Power BI admin. Okay. Any questions? No questions. Okay, let's move forward. The next thing that I want to call out, and this is insanely useful, even in Microsoft. So of course that I have a Power BI tenant, I have a Power BI license, I have a premium license, I have a Azure subscription, but I am not an admin in anything. And sometimes I need to try admin stuff because I'm working with a customer and I want to try some new feature, and I want to enable these tenant settings. I want to be able to create service principals if I want, create security groups if I want. So one piece of advice I will give you, if you are a Power BI developer, is that you can have your own Power BI playground that will give you 25 E5 licenses, not only Power BI, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and you will get full tenant control. And even better, if you have an MSDN subscription and if you get that Azure credit, monthly Azure credit, you can even bind the two together. So you can have a Power BI tenant, an Office 365 tenant, and an Azure, and everything in the same tenant. So you can even try stuff like Power BI embedded. And of course, you can try premium, at least premium per user, because premium per user, you can do trials. Now, the thing is, this is entirely for free. You can use it. You just need to follow this link. And there is, so this is pretty well documented. You just need to follow it. And you get your licenses. For example, this tenant that I'm showing right here is one of those tenants. And you will be the global admin of that. But this is only for development. So don't think this for POCs with customers, because for that you should create a trial. This is for you as a developer to have your own playground, and believe me, they will track if you are using this for development or not. So if you create this and then suddenly you have people using the email every day as a production tenant, they will block you. If you only use it for dev, then this will renew automatically in the end at the end of 90 days. So it will work for 90 days, and at the end of 90 days it will renew automatically. So this is very useful if you want to try stuff. You want to try stuff as an admin if you want to be in complete control. So take a look at it. It's an amazing resource if you are a Power BI developer. Okay. Now enough of the theory about the APIs. Now let's talk about some examples. Agustina, are you still there? Can you tell me how much time do I have?
Pretty much until 7 it's scheduled, so don't worry.
Okay, I have like 20 minutes, more or less. 30 minutes.
40 actually.
40. Oh, okay. Oh.
No.
I'm this time I think I will end up on time. I'm proud of myself. So let's talk about some scenarios of things that you can do that are actually useful and can help you on your day-to-day job. So the first one is the one that gets me more excited. So it's the execute queries API. This is for me the coolest API of them all. I usually say that my head was like with butterflies when I saw this for the first time, pumping with ideas of things that you can do. I will give you 4 examples. So this is basically an API. So here's the link for the API. So the API is a post request, it's not a get, because you need to pass something on the body. On get request, you cannot. So you need to put the dataset ID / execute queries. By the way, where is this dataset ID? So if you want to execute a query on a dataset like this, the dataset ID is here. Okay, workspace ID, dataset ID. Here, so slash execute queries, and on the body, you need to pass a DAX query like this, and as a response, you will get a JSON payload with the result of that DAX query. So as simple as that. And why this is useful? First, for example, you can use this API, this REST API, with an application, with whatever data integration tool that can call an HTTP request and do some kind of data integration, getting data from a Power BI data set and storing data on the data lake. Now, this is very limited, or this is not very limited. Actually, I think it's pretty generous. So the query that you execute cannot return more than 100K rows, 100,000 rows. If you need more than this, maybe you are not thinking well, because this is a lot of data. And Power BI is not a database to extract data. Power BI is an analytical database, but think on data integration scenarios like you have some business KPIs and you want to just get those business KPIs by month and by store, like the sales by store per month in comparison to last year, and the year to date and the month to date. And Power BI will execute like those type of calculations in a blast, very, very fast. And you can store that data for snapshot scenarios, just to store those values for later comparison or auditing, for example. Another scenario, and I see this all the time, is for example, you are using published web. You develop a published web or RBI embedded. You develop a web page, something like this, where you have some KPIs here in the top, and you are embedding a Power BI report, and you want to make sure that this KPI maps to the KPI in the Power BI dataset. So on your web application, you can do a HTTP request that will get that value, and it will be the same value of the Power BI report that you are embedding. Of course, that it may and may not make sense to do this, but sometimes on the web app, you just don't want to embed the Power BI. You just want to use a standard HTML object to make it more pretty. So that's another scenario. Another one is data quality, and there is this amazing blog post that talks about this by James Brune, where you can consider using the REST API to query the data sets, and then use some framework testing framework as Cucumber or SpecFlow, where you will declare, you will do some data quality tests, some things like, okay, if I know that my stores never sell per day more than 1,000 euros, then I can just make a query to my data set. Okay, is there any store with a daily sale or with an average daily sale of more than 1,000? And if there is probably a data quality issue. And the thing is, of course, that you could use XMLA connection, but with the REST API, it makes these types of usage way more simple, because it's just an HTTP request, and you can do an HTTP request with a framework like Cucumber and call the REST API to get the data from the data sets and validate it using your data quality tests. And the last one, and this is the one that I'm going to make you a demo, you can build some sort of alerting systems. And in here, I'm not going to show, this is not going to be code. So, for example, I can very easily create a Power Automate like this. And this, by the way, is one of the beauties of this platform, is a way that you can bring all of this together, the Power Platform. So Power BI, Power Automate, bring all of them together And the power of this is what really, in my opinion, one of the things that puts Power BI above the others is the ecosystem. The solutions that you can create with this is like Lego pieces. You can mix them, you can break them, you can use them together, use them apart. It's amazing. So I have this data flow, and on this data flow, it's a data flow that runs every day at 9 a.m. And I'm using some data flow best practices that my friends advised me. So I create a variable with a DAX query. So I can create this DAX query in DAX Studio. And this DAX query, it's pretty simple. What it's doing is, of course, I'm prefixing a date, but the idea here should be using the today date, but I don't have this data set updating every day. So I'm just using a static date over here. But the query is just going, and for every employee, it will calculate the sales amount for this day, and it will return only the rows or the employees that have the sales amount of today inferior to the sales amount of last year. So I'm using a measure that I have in my model, sales amount versus last year. So I only want to return employees that are underperforming comparing to last year. I also have a variable for the dataset ID, and then I'm going to use the execute queries API. For that, I'm using the HTTP connector in Power Automate. I use that same payload I just showed you on the documentation. So queries, the DAX query over here, if I want to return nulls or not. And then I need to parse the JSON. That's what I told you, that sometimes you need to, in Power Automate, you need to use the payload. You can just click here, generate from sample, and you go and get that sample that is that exists on the documentation, just to get going. Okay, and now what I'm doing is I'm taking that result, and I'm going to, for each manager, I'm going to send an email telling them the employees that are underperforming. So I create a CSV table, an HTML table, and I use the send an email activity. So if I run this, let's run this manually, run flow. And if I go to my email, I should be getting in my email, here it is, an email with employees that are underperforming. Of course, I can format this a little bit better, so I was a little bit lazy with this. So I'm sending the manager an email with the employees that are underperforming, and I even attached the CSV that he can use. So this is a very simple scenario, but if you use Power BI for a while, I'm sure that you can think on many other scenarios of very useful stuff that you can do with this API. And the cherry on top of the cake is this works with Premium, but it also works with Shared. So you don't need to have Premium to call this API, which is amazing. Of course, there are some requirements. You need to have, especially to use with the Power Automate, you need to have the service principal. The service principal needs to have the build permission on the data set, and it needs to be also authorized to use the XMLA endpoint. Other than that, there are some limitations, like you can only execute a query that can return more than 100K rows. One more time, if you need more than this, there are workarounds, so you can do the same query and do some kind of pagination. But it is when I see people doing this, when I was in consulting, I always told my team, this is where it smells. Okay, maybe this is not the right path. Maybe you need to think, okay, maybe extract data from the data lake. Don't use Power BI. I understand that a lot of logic will be on the Power BI data set, but when you need to do extractions and queries with extractions of more than 100K rows from a Power BI data set, it smells. Okay, maybe you need to stop and think on other solutions, because you will get burned. Okay, and you can only execute one query at a time over the data set. But one more time, I still think that this API is really amazing, and the possibilities that it opens are endless. I'm not going into much detail on this. I have a session, and I have slides, I have an open source project all around this. You just need to follow the links. But one very, very useful use case for the APIs is monitoring. And monitoring is, if you are serious into Power BI in your company and you are not monitoring what your users are doing, you are basically guessing, and you are not knowing, you are not making the right decisions, believe me. You are not giving importance to what really needs to be given attention, and maybe you are even supporting reports and workspaces that no one uses. So in the end, you get a report like this. So this is the open source solution that I got. So you can monitor the entire tenant. You have a list of everything that exists inside of your tenant. Just quickly show you. So this is the end result. So it's just a standard Power BI report. So you can see all the data sources that exist in your tenant from all the data sets. So you can, for example, look at the SQL servers, the SQL server names, the HTTP data sources, the URL that are being used, permissions. This is very useful. So you can select a user and see everything that user has access to, not only workspaces, but workspaces, data flows, reports, dashboards, everything the user has access to will be listed in here. Very, very useful for InfoSec. And of course, the activity. So just want to know how many distinct users I have per day, per month, what type of activities. I can click on the user. I can see what that user is doing, which hours is he active, which hours the whole tenant is active. So this is a demo tenant, so it's almost active every hour because people all over the world use it. So monitoring is one very good use case for the admin APIs. The open source solution that I made available is basically an Azure function that extracts data from the REST APIs, in the end store it in the blob storage, and then Power BI reports over this blob storage. Regarding the APIs, a ton of APIs are called in here. So I'm using all of them are admin APIs. I'm using the admin activity events API. I'm using the scanner APIs, which it's an API that got released last year that allows you to scan a full tenant in minutes and in an incremental way. So this first API that you need to call, it's an incremental API, so you can provide a date and they will get you all the workspaces that were modified since that date. If you don't provide a date, they will get you all the workspaces in the tenant. And then it's an asynchronous API. So you make a request, ask for a scanner of the workspace, and then you get an ID, and you can call that ID, you can call the status of the scan of that ID, and then there is a final API to get the results of that. And I'm also using other APIs, not Power BI APIs, the graph APIs to get the users and the licenses, because one thing that I have in here is the correlation between users with licenses and usage. For example, I want to know people with a Power BI license that not even do a login in Power BI, okay, on this tenant. Very well. And this is about monitoring. So I could be speaking 1 hour just on this topic. If you are interested in this, there is a link on the slides that will take you to a session that it's all around this. Now let's talk about other scenarios. One of the recent APIs that got released is the Async Refresh API. It's an API that there was an older API. It's not this one. This is new. So there is an older API that exists for a while called refresh dataset in group. You pass the group ID, the dataset ID, the refreshes. You say the dataset ID you want to refresh, and it will refresh the dataset for you. Now, the problem of this API is that it's synchronous. So you call it, and if something fails, the refresh will get canceled. You can also refresh a dataset using the XMLA endpoint, but that is also synchronous. So if something breaks the connection, the transaction will fail. So especially on large data models, this is a problem. So the Power BI team, they released this async refresh API. That the difference is this is fire and forget. So you just call the API, you get an ID, and then you save that ID, and you can call that ID to see the status of the refresh. And it has some great enhancements. So you can do auto retries. So you can call the refresh and you can say, okay, if something fails, try again. But try again on Power BI servers, not on your server. So you just call it. You can call this on, for example, on a logic app, and then have the logic app running for every minute, and you need to save that ID and just asking, is it done? Is it done? Is it done? And when it's done, the refresh will happen. But the refresh will run on the Power BI side, and it will be monitored on Power BI servers, not your servers. And I also liked another enhancement they made. It's called the batched commit. So you can throw a huge payload of refresh operations, and you can say, okay, I want this to be a whole transaction, or I want this to be a batch transaction. So every time they finish a table or partition, it will commit. So it's not going to wait until the end of the whole refresh to commit. This is useful if you want to process, let's say, 100 partitions or 100 tables. If it is a transactional, if it fails on the table 99, it will roll back everything. If it is a batch commit, if it fails on table 99, okay, tables until the table 99 will be okay. So let me show you how you can use this. So I have here a script called refresh async. Is in here. One more time, this is on my GitHub repo. So this is a script. It's a PowerShell script. And another time, you can use this in whatever language you want. You can even use this in Power Automate. So the script has a few parameters. First, the workspace ID. I wanna. Where's the dataset? The dataset ID. The type of refresh is if it is full. If it is the apply incremental apply refresh policy. If it is data. So you have multiple types of refresh. The amount of parallelism that I want to apply. Okay. This because I'm executing a refresh of 1, 2 tables and 1, 2, 3, 4 partitions. On a table, you can have partitions, and but I want to make sure, because you might, and this is important because you might want to protect your database, your data source, where Power BI will connect to. By default, the max parallelism is 6. You can increase this to more than 6. I think there's a limit, if I'm not mistaken, 16. But sometimes you don't even want to get more than one query on the database. But I want to execute this as a whole transaction, but I want to make sure that no more than 1 or 3 queries in this case is going to be hit. It will hit the database at the same time in parallel. This is the commit mode if I want a transactional or a batch, and the retry count. So in my case, I don't want to retry anything. If it fails, it fails. And the objects. Okay. I want to process. And this is another thing that you cannot do by going to the data set and just call it a refresh there. If you go to on the browser, if you open a data set and you do a refresh like this, if you click here, this will refresh the whole module all the time. So with these APIs, you can refresh only one table, or you can refresh only one partition. Okay, this can also make your refreshes a lot more faster. So I'm refreshing 2 tables and 4 partitions. And this is the script. Okay, the script, you can see that is nothing special. What I'm doing is I'm calling the refresh APIs. Now, actually, I'm getting the refreshes that are running. And if there is anything running, then instead of calling the refresh, I will wait for that refresh to end. If there is nothing running, then I will post a new refresh command to execute the refresh, and I need to wait for the refresh to end. So if I run this, this will start the refresh, and it's going to be sleeping until the refresh starts, but this is on the server. So I could, for example, I can stop the script. Look, I will stop the script, and if I run it again, it will keep waiting, okay? And I can shut down my computer, and the refresh will happen. So async APIs, refresh API can be really, really useful for you on your orchestration logic around the Power BI dataset refresh. For example, you might have databases on-prem, ETL processes, and you should consider using the async refresh APIs to refresh your datasets. Let's see if this ends. So it didn't end, but it will end. Another scenario, another use case for the REST APIs is DevOps. And first, just before I show you this, there are other options. Okay, you have the deployment pipelines. That is a more UI citizen developer focused approach to have a development workspace, a production workspace, and have the complete deployment between those. If you are in a more advanced scenario and you have Azure DevOps, you have Premium, you should watch this Daniel session that show you how to use Tableau Editor, Azure DevOps, and the REST APIs to have a complete continuous integration and deployment strategy with Power BI. If you don't have those and you want to, and maybe deployment pipelines don't work in your scenario, let me show you another approach that is using a lot of the REST APIs behind the scenes. I have a repo for this. I call it the PBI DevOps, and so it's documented. You can try it on your own, but let me try to show you how this works. So the idea is this: I have a folder. So you need to download or clone that repo, and you have it comes with a sample project, and the sample project is basically a PBIX for the data set and some live connected reports connected to that data set. And I also have a paginated report. And the idea is, first, there is I want to have a development environment, a production environment, and a quality environment, but I don't have, and that's actually something that I consider a bad practice. I don't have a PBIX for dev and a PBIX for qual and a PBIX for production. I only have one version of my development. So the developer team only has one version of the PBIX. Now the deployment is different. For example, on that project, on the PBI DevOps project, there are multiple. You can have multiple of these configuration files. So, for example, on the config dev, there is a JSON, and on this JSON, I will declare the workspaces. So on development, I want everything in the same workspace. And I say I need to declare the data set that I have. So I have a data set called WWY sales PBIX. I want to make sure that this data set, when I run the script, will be deployed to the development workspace, and the parameters of the data set, they will target the development database. And these are all the reports that I want to deploy. And for every report, I need to say which workspace the report will be deployed and which data set the report will be binded once it's online. So the Power BI, the customer PBIX may be binded to the data set in dev, but when I publish it online, I will bind this data set, this report to the data set of the environment that I'm deploying. If it is dev, it will be the data set of dev. If it's production, is the data set of production. And I have the same thing for the production environment. On the production environment, I have this is a little bit more complex. So I have a workspace for data sets, and I have a workspace for report of sales and a workspace for report of marketing. Same files. So this is not different files. It's the same files, but a different environment, let's say topology or organization. And on the data set, now I'm targeting the production database. And on the reports, I'm targeting the production data set. And you basically declare in this JSON file, you declare the way you want things to be deployed, and you are good to go. So you do this once. You do your development on locally, directly on the PBIX files. We try to show you doing a simple thing like we just open this report over here, and let's change something. I should have opened this before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change something in this report, and I will just run the script. It's the script that you always need to run the same script. It's deploy PS1, and this will just deploy everything for me. And if it already exists, it won't do anything. It will maybe update the permissions of the workspace if there is a new user. And it will deploy the data sets, and it will deploy the reports and make sure that everything is binded the way it's supposed to be. So it just opened. Let's do a quick change over here. Change this, for example. Let's change this to red and save it. So, and if I go online to my workspace, that I think it's called DevOps, PBI DevOps Marketing Customer, it should be in green. Now, if I run the script, this will take care of the whole deployment. And I can even, for example, recreate a new environment from scratch. And for that, what I need to do is, for example, if I just want to create a new workspace, let's say user group temp slash. If I want to create a new environment from scratch, I will just, these workspaces, they don't exist. Right now is updating something that exists online. You can see that updating report content. And if I refresh this, this will be with a new color, I hope, in red. But now let's go even more crazy. Let's recreate everything. This can also, you can also think on use something like this for a tenant migration, for example. Now, if I run this, this will create those new workspaces, and it will upload the data sets, will upload the reports, and it will make sure that everything will be working on that new environment. And always using the same development files. So this can be useful for you to automate your deployment tasks, because believe me, if you have a complex, if you have a lot of reports and you have a lot of data sets, you will get it wrong sometime. So you will be tired and you will deploy the report binded to the wrong data set. But the script will never get it wrong. So the script, if it runs okay today, it will run okay tomorrow. So you can see that I have the new workspace I just created here, and you can you can see that the customer report is binded to the data set on that workspace. It's not the same data set of my Power BI file. My Power BI file is connected to the development workspace, not that workspace. So in here, this is using a lot of APIs behind the scenes. This is using the import APIs, the rebind APIs, and can be really useful to automate some of the work. But one more time, if deployment pipelines work for you, forget it. Use the deployment pipelines. You are better served. You don't need to write any code, and if it works, it works. If you want to take this a step further, you might consider Azure DevOps and XMLA endpoints and using Beam files, because using the Beam files, you get source control. You can have multiple users developing on the same data sets. That's something that you cannot achieve using either of this. Now, another example of a very useful API, one of my favorites, and actually I'm using this Rebind API heavily on that DevOps project, is the Rebind API. And it's useful for you to know about this API because bad things can happen. So you might be in a situation sometime where the data set gets a problem and you have hundreds of reports connecting to that data set. And now you need to rebind all of those reports to a new data set. And I've seen this happening in some customers where they were actually downloading each PBIX, opening Power BI desktop, and do the rebinding there. And if it is 3 reports, just do it. It will be easier. Do it manually. If it is 1,000 reports, don't do it manually. You have an API to do that. Let me show you. Here, a script, I call it the rebind reports. So I have 2 data sets, dataset A and dataset B, and I have some reports that exist in this workspace. You can click on the dataset and view the lineage of a dataset. This is also useful for other purposes, but you can see that everything is connecting to dataset A. Test 1, test 2, test 3, and not only from this workspace, but from other workspaces as well. So this is a workspace where we are at now, but there are other 2 workspaces with report A, report V, report X, report Y, that they all connect to this dataset. Now, the idea is I want to rebind. So I want to, for example, this is the dataset that is connected to Azure Analysis Services. And now I want to connect to Power BI Premium, a new dataset that is on Power BI Premium. You don't need to do it manually. Okay. What you can do is you can, as usual, I have a script. It's also on the repo. I call it the Rebind Auto Admin. You need to execute this script as a Power BI admin because I need to find out every report that connects to the old data set and bind it to the new data set. So the parameters of this script are basically the old data set ID and the new data set ID. So the old data set ID is data set A, so I need to swap this. The new data set is data set B. The way to get the data set ID is real simple. You go to the settings of the data set, and this is the data set ID. And if I run the script, but just before that, so the script, you can see that it's not complex. So I'm getting all the workspaces in the organization and getting a variable with all the combinations between dataset ID and the report ID. And then I just need to find out every report that connects to the old dataset ID. And after that, I just need to call the Rebind API for every report that connects to the old dataset. So this is the Rebind API. Let's call it. Let's run this. And this is just metadata. This will run in a few seconds. So it's done. So it rebinded everything. And now, if I go back to my lineage, you will see that everything will be connected now to dataset B and not dataset A. And dataset A doesn't have anything here. So just remember, even if you didn't understand anything that I just showed you, if you ever have, if you in the future you are in a situation where you need to change the data set for all the reports and you have like hundreds or tens, just remember that guy from Portugal that told you that you can automate that task. Don't go and download the PBIX manually and spend a couple of days in a stressful and not very pleasant situation of opening Power BI desktop for every single one of them. And the reason I'm telling you this is I saw this happening. Okay, and it's go play with your family. It's you have much better ways to put the usage of your time, and that's APIs is also all about sometimes about productivity. Okay, automating stuff. So whenever you have a repeating task, maybe that is an API that you can use. Another example, and I won't be able to demo this because I forgot to turn on my premium capacity. But this might be useful. So this is the whole script, and this might be useful, especially when you are in a situation like, okay, I want to migrate from Power BI Embedded to Premium, or I want to migrate from Premium per user to Premium, moving from Gen 1 to Gen 2, I need to create new capacities. You can. There is a REST API, an admin REST API that allows you to change the capacity of a workspace, the premium capacity of a workspace. And there is also another REST API that allows you to get the workspaces and see which capacity is binded to that workspace. So if you need to rebind, let's say, all the workspaces that are binded to a premium per user capacity and it need to rebind it to a new premium capacity, you can write a script like this. The script is also on GitHub that will get all the workspaces. It will find all the workspaces that connect to the old capacity, and it will call the admin capacities assigned workspace, and it will say, okay, this is the capacity that you need to assign. There is as well, and one more time, if there is if we are talking about 2 and 3, 10 workspaces, just go as an admin or go to each workspace and do it. This is useful when we are talking about 1,000 workspaces, because in here you don't have an easy way to change all of them. You can actually, I don't know if this was here. Actually, you can increase this list, and you can come here, but the capacity won't show up here anymore. So if you have a huge list of workspaces, that API can help you automate that task. So if you have a small list of workspaces, then you can also use this. Okay, but if and this can also, you can also do some automation with this. You can maybe assign the premium capacity during the night and removing during the day. Just know that this API exists, and don't do it manually if it is a massive amount of workspaces. So as a recap, APIs can help you, as I hope I've shown you and you understood it, the potential of it, avoid repetitive work. You can learn more about all the APIs available in that docs, and you can do, as I do all the time, that's why I create this repo, a collection of scripts that you can easily reuse to call those APIs. And these scripts can literally make you a lot more efficient on your day-to-day Power BI development job. So thank you. I hope this was worth your time. It was a pleasure to be here, and I will just open up for questions. Hello. I hope I'm not the only one here.
No, not at all. Thanks a lot. Augustine had to leave. That's why I'm taking over. Okay. Just for the closing. But obviously, as you said, thanks, Rui. And if there's any questions, just feel free to unmute yourselves. I'll check again in the chat if there's anything. Oh, I think there's a question from Christian. Say you do an async refresh of table A in a data set and the refresh will take 10 minutes to complete. Then you also need to do an async refresh of table B in the same data set every minute, which will overlap with a refresh of table A. As far as I can tell, the slow async refresh of table A will lock the entire data set from processing additional async refreshes of other tables until it's finished. Is there any way to get around this limitation?
No, unfortunately, no. You can only call this API once per dataset. So you cannot call what you can do is you can group all of them together, table A and table B, and call it using the batch commit. But you can only call this because when you call the API, this will be a special type of refresh that it's called. That's why on the beginning of the script, you will see that I'm getting all the refreshes and it's called reliable processing. You can only have one running at a time. So yes, if you execute on table A, you need to wait 10 minutes to call it again for table B, unfortunately, but it's a limitation that that exists. Maybe it will get lifted. So this is still in preview. But in a situation like that, what you need to do is you need to group the table A and table B, and maybe think on changing the commit mode from transactional to batch.
I guess that should answer the question. Is there anything else? We're approaching end of the hour. Okay, nobody's unmuting themselves, so I guess there's nothing left to say.
Maybe one question.
Oh yeah.
Just great session. A lot to digest. Some session to watch probably 5 times. I have a question regarding the development environment. I think you touched a lot of points. Do you also have kind of a best practice, like how to set up your own developer environment using the developer license, and like how do you put it all together? Because you're touching a little bit of Power Automate, you're touching a little bit of the desktop. Do you have like some in for someone that wants to set it up as well, like you did? Is there an image?
No, unfortunately, there is no built-in image. So you're talking about this developer subscription, right?
Exactly.
So when you create this for the first time, you will get a clean Power BI tenant. There are some things that I do every time I do it. I try to customize it a little bit with a different color than my company, at least to know that this is my playground. Another thing that you can do, that you should do, is that, for example, that recommendation around the tenant settings and the security groups. And another thing that I always do is I create, instead of, because you will get 25 licenses. And one of the most useful things about this playground is you can create users and simulate permissions as a read-only user and a pro user. So what I usually do is I create first. I never assign permissions directly to the users. So I create some security groups like this. So this is the name of the tenant. So free users, gods, it's the admin, the Power BI admin is the power users. So this is really helpful to have the security groups and then assign, for example, if you wanna give access to as an admin level, you will give that access to this security group, and you know that whoever is on this security group will be the global admin or it will be the admin of Power BI and the admin of the capacities, for example. But unfortunately, there is no like guideline for you to create a Power BI tenant. There are actually one thing that it's important to follow, and I have this in here. This Power BI adoption roadmap. There are some information on this link about if you are creating a new tenant, but this is mostly for customers. So if you see my workspace, it's a mess because this is actually a playground. But whenever you are creating a new Power BI tenant, it's important to have a strategy. It's important to follow some best practices as naming. How will you name your workspaces, your apps? How will you name your data sets? And it's important, whatever the rule you decide, the most important thing is the coherence. So it's being coherent and follow that rule. And don't end with something like this, where it's like multiple names, different types of strategies. Actually, I even try to follow some prefix over here, but this is a playground. This is not an example. But if the question is more, how can I create like something from scratch in a customer? See this adoption roadmap links. There are also a ton of videos from Melissa Coates. She talks a lot about this governance, but the baselines for me is naming for everything: workspace, datasets, reports, apps. Having a good naming strategy is key. Security groups for every tenant setting should have its security group independent, not ending up with something that I see a lot as well, especially with the admin API. So, for example, you create a security group called service principals, and later you need to add a new service principal, and you also need to allow the admin access to the admin APIs. So you shouldn't reuse the same security group, because there might be in here service principals that you don't want to give admin access. So what you should do is you should create a new one. Power BI settings, service principals, admin. And though the service principals that are in this security group are the ones that will be authorized to call the admin APIs. And then there is a ton of other stuff, but this is more about governance of the Power BI tenant. For the developer subscription, honestly, if it is for the developer subscription, I don't know. Maybe you will start to organize everything, but in the end, it will be a playground, and it will probably end up in something like what I have today.
No, great, Pete. Thank you very much. Great set.
Okay, I think we're on the hour. If there's no other questions, then thanks to you for your, also from my side, interesting session. And for everybody else, let me just quickly share my slides.
And thank you. It was always a pleasure to be on these user groups and give back to the community. Thank you for having me, and I hope it was worth your time.
It definitely was, if I may speak for myself. To everybody else, so if you wanna check on the recording again and rewatch it, just join the meetup group. The link will be posted there, or just follow and subscribe the YouTube channel where you can watch this recording and, of course, all the last ones that we have. And you can also join for next Wednesday. We have another exciting session coming up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.